No one needs another guru. What you need is real talk. From real people. Who've lived it and breathed it. Get ready to learn the secrets to scale on the Guts and Glory Show with your host, Louise Scott.
All right, guys, welcome to the Guts and Glory Show, a show dedicated to helping you learn just a little more so you can be better and bigger than you were before. And I'm really excited to have my good friend, Jason Hennessey from Hennessey Digital, here on today's show. And he is an author, a business owner, a father, a world traveler, a mentor. I mean, just a bunch of things to a lot of people. But he's written 2 books that you need to learn from because SEO is not dead, and he's written Law Firm SEO and Honest SEO, which I believe will give you the secrets to unlocking your business, your lead generation, and ultimately more predictable sales and more predictable profits. And so let's welcome together Jason Hennessey. Thanks for being here.
Louise, thank you so much, man. I'm honored to be here.
Absolutely. Well, I'm really excited because you are a second-time guest on the show. And I was joking before we got on the call that when I first had you on, you were my beta test. Like I didn't know how to run a show. I didn't know how to make it fun and engaging. I was reading every single line, like, how are you today? Can you tell us your name? And that was so boring. And I said, now that I've revamped it and getting thousands of downloads, I wanted to bring on some of my favorite guests that can really impact the people who are listening. And so I'm so thankful that you came on and so thankful that you're adding this kind of value to our audience. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about you. Just tell the audience kind of your background and how you even got into SEO, because I think this is actually a really great story. So tell us about how you got into SEO.
Yeah, thanks, Luis. And again, honored to be back. Thank you so much for having me. So I got into SEO in the early days, back in 2001, out of a necessity. I was going to college at UNLV, contemplate going to law school, studying for the LSAT. And I was on the weekends, I had a DJ company. I was DJing weddings and parties and whatnot. And so that DJ company grew into a bigger company. And the website that I had wasn't really attracting brides from all over the country because I lived in Las Vegas going to UNLV. So I said, let me create a website called Vegas Wedding Mall, right? As an entrepreneur, you always have ideas, right? And I kind of and I created a website. And after about 3 months after the site was built, nobody was coming to the website. And so I called the developer. I'm like, hey, Stalin, the website that you developed, it's great, but nobody's coming to it. And he goes, oh, yeah, that's called like search engine optimization or something. I don't do that. And I'm like, oh, shit. So I guess I'm going to have to teach myself this stuff. And so I bought a book. I studied it. Read it front to back twice. And then I just became really passionate about that topic. And so again, that was 22 years ago. And I'm still as passionate about that subject. So,
and what happened to that website?
So I built it up and it was great. I did a lot of practice on that website. I was able to rank on Google. I turned it into a whole business, which then I sold. We built Seattle Wedding Mall, Los Angeles Wedding Mall, right?
Wow. And
so I really kind of got my start kind of practicing on those websites. And SEO was a lot easier back then. Don't get me wrong. But still, the core principles that I learned back then still applicable today.
That's amazing. That's a huge transition from being in the wedding industry to now being in the law firm industry. Yeah. How do these businesses differ, or is business all the same?
No, I mean SEO strategies are all the same. It's just different vernacular, I guess, right? Like if I go to a legal conference, they're speaking a different language than if I were to go to like a wedding or plumbing conference, right? But core principles, SEO is basically kind of like the same. You write content that's relevant to somebody that's searching. Granted, like being in the industry, so long, I've got into legal in 2008 is when I started like that journey. You start to learn lessons, and what people are searching for, and, just kind of having conversation, like, me and you, like sitting at a Miami Heat game, just kind of having a casual conversation, right? You learn it, right? So it becomes more of a strength for you.
Absolutely. Now I have clients because at 8-Figure Firm, obviously we coach a lot of law firms and they don't believe in SEO. And I'm just floored. Like they think that SEO is like the Yellow Pages book, and it's not. So how do you get people out of that headspace where they're just not committed to investing in their website and content creation?
It's an old saying, right? The best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago or today,
Yes.
right? And that's as really accurate with SEO. I think the only way that I can get people to kind of buy into it, that it works, is managing expectations from the start, like letting them know that, hey, listen, if you just got a brand new website that doesn't have any content, you're probably like a year and a half, 2 years before you even see your first lead in a competitive market. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And if they don't want to play ball at that point, like I'd rather them save the money and the headache of trying to invest in somebody like me. Like I don't want to, like that's the thing about me is like I don't ever want to be at a conference and like I'm hiding behind like a booth because somebody's walking over that I screwed them over. I don't live my life like that. I'd rather just kind of be upfront, honest, manage expectations, and then let them know that it works, right? I can show them case studies of clients that we've been working with for 7-8 years on kind of what that looks like, so that's how I do it.
I think one of the problems though, is that people, even when you tell them about the expectation, they do expect immediate results. Like what is the right line to set expectations? Because I think this is important, not just when you're selling SEO, but when you're selling any kind of product, any kind of service. What is the line? How do you get a person to truly understand the expectation that you're giving them?
By educating them. That's the most important thing. Like rather than selling somebody, it's one thing to get on a call and be like, hey, and start speaking a different language of SEO and H1 tags and canonical, I don't care about that, right? But it's really just kind of educating them, right? About the process and looking at the competition and showing them the difference between them and you and just basically taking them on the journey and then continuing to educate them along the way, right?
I think that's
and
huge.
it's really important. Now, granted, don't get me wrong. Some people don't like that, right? Some people, when the refrigerator is broken, they call the appliance guy and they don't want to learn how to fix the refrigerator, right? They just want to turn on and keep their milk cold, right? So there is a balance there, but it's important because if, the clients that are actively engaged, really get more value from us because they start to buy into it and believe it and celebrate when we celebrate,
Absolutely. And I think, you touched on kind of the clients who are engaged. I've talked about building relationships with vendors, and when people have a business, they fail to build those relationships. What's been your experience in building relationships with your vendors, not just the law firm clients, but like with vendors that you work with? What's been your experience there?
Oh, it's so important, right? Just kind of like the relationship, trust is built upon a better relationship, right? And, those like to do business with that, you trust and you like, right? And so, if you're just kind of distant, there's no communication, like, it's not going to end well, like you're paying for a service, you don't know what they're doing, they're always questioning in it. So it's better just kind of have a good relationship and keep the lines of communication open. That's just the key.
This show has been brought to you by 8-Figure Firm Consulting. At 8-Figure Firm, we help law firms turn into law businesses. Stop wasting your time with gurus who've never built a successful business. At 8-Figure Firm, we'll show you how to unleash the power of your law firm for personal and financial freedom. For more information, go to 8figurefirm.com. Welcome back to the Guts and Glory Show with your host, Louise Scott.
Now, I want to segue into something you said earlier, because I think there's a large contingency of people listening who are wanting to get into business, who want to do something different with their life, and they don't know how to get started or how to generate leads or how to do anything in their business. And you said this word passion. You read the book cover to cover, and then you became passionate about it. What is passion? What does passion mean to you? Because so many people are like, I don't know what my passion is. Like, I don't know how I can start a business or get out of the rat race, and I'm in a rut. Like, what does passion mean to you?
I think passion is, are you willing, to do what you do day in and day out without collecting a paycheck? Right? Like you actually love what you do so much that you wake up in the morning and you're just super excited to kind of do what you do. Right. I think if that's the way you feel when you wake up in the morning, you probably found your passion.
Yeah. Now here's the thing. Loving what you do doesn't mean that you love it all the time.
That's right.
Right. I recently, and I don't know if he's ever going to hear this, but I want you to give me your opinion on something that Gary Vee says.
Okay.
Gary Vee talks about you have to be happy, you have to be happy, you have to be happy. And my position on this has always been that happiness is a fleeting emotion. If you're chasing happiness, you may be chasing something that's always going to disappear from you. What's your take on it?
Yeah, I think happiness is kind of defined so many different ways. Like sometimes, happiness could be landing a new big client, right? You're high-fiving at work, right? Happiness can be just sitting at the park on a Saturday with your dog, right? You know what I mean? I think it all comes down to your perspective on life. There's rough days in anything. There's rough days as a parent. There's rough days as an entrepreneur. There's rough days just in life, right? As a Braves fan, whatever. Right? Right. But I think it just comes down to your perspective, right? Like you have to kind of be grateful for some of your failures, right? I think it kind of makes you better. At least that's kind of how I live my life, right? Like for example, like I grew up, I didn't have like a father figure, right? My father left. My mom raised me at 16 years old. She had me single mom working like a job cleaning houses, right? To kind of, we didn't even have a car, right? We walked everywhere, right? So like I could be super angry at my father and like be disappointed, right? Instead, I look at it as like that's a blessing, right? Because of that, now I'm the father that I am, and so I'm grateful for that, right? So like it's all a matter of just perspective on things, I think.
That's very true. I in the past I struggled with depression. I tell people about my experience where I spent 20 years of my life just feeling very sad about things. I had a hard time overcoming it. I've written a book about this that's actually being released here shortly. And one of the things that I realized in that moment was that I didn't have the right perspective on things. Everything felt like it weighed me down.
Sure.
And when I started developing the right perspective, things did start to change. But how do you get that perspective? Like for me, it took me 20 years, counseling, going on a retreat where I was completely unplugged, lots of prayer. I'm a faith-based person.
Sure.
How does a person get that?
Yeah. Well, first it's who you surround yourself with, right? The people that you surround yourself with. I mean, if you're around people that are just constantly kind of, being negative and gossiping about things and right, that kind of like changes your perspective, right? There's the force of positive energy and the force of negative energy. In some cases, like the force of negative energy can really like be stronger than the force of positive energy, right? So for me, I'm just like, I wouldn't say I was always like this, where like consciously I was aware. I think in the past, as I was kind of growing up, I had no clue. I wish I would know now when I back in those days. But I think it's just coming down to awareness, surrounding yourself with the right people. Like you said, you watch Gary Vee videos, right? That's inspiration. That's motivation, right? That's going to kind of create more positive energy for you, right? So I think just surround yourself with more positivity, and I think your life becomes more positive.
I do think that people who listen to the news too often, who listen to negative things too often, tend to have a worse outlook in life. And so in the same way, if you're not around the right people, it's hard to have the right perspective.
And the other thing too, I would say, Luis, too, is by doing things for others, right? You know what I mean? Like smallest thing, like when you open up a door for somebody, you hold a door for somebody that's coming with like a baby stroller, right? They're thankful, but it makes you feel better.
Yeah.
Right.
That's true.
So if it makes you feel better, start to do more of that stuff, right? Without any without expecting anything in return.
When and I agree with that. And when I think about your business trajectory, and I think about because you're talking about not having an expectation of something in return immediately and so forth. Did you ever find yourself in building a business that you had to exhibit a tremendous amount of patience, or did things just kind of happen naturally for you?
Boy, man, I have no patience, man. Like I'm just wired that way. Like I can't even sit and watch a movie, man. It's really bad. So like I always like kind of like instant gratification, with things, and I think that's definitely like my weakness in life and has always been. I've had to think by having a daughter, I've learned to kind of have more patience, which is great. You're a faithful person. I think that's God sending a blessing, obviously. So I think, and also surrounding myself with a good leadership team, and the people that we hire, like everybody's got a different zone of genius, right?
Yeah.
I don't want to lie and say that, accounting is my zone of genius. Terrible at that, right? But I've got somebody in place that's their zone of genius. I've got somebody in place in HR that's their zone of genius, and collectively we build a strong company.
So talk to me about this company, because like you have an 8-figure business,
Mm-hmm.
and you've gone through multiple different stages of building the business. So
Yeah.
talk to the audience member who is just starting off. What should they be focusing on when they're going from about 0 to 3 million? What do you believe the focus should be?
Yes. So I think, you're going to make a lot of mistakes during that period. It's going to happen. I think, the best thing that I wish I would have done back then would to be find a mentor earlier, right? I know that's kind of like your business, and I'm not just not to plug your business. I genuinely mean that. Like I found a mentor as I was kind of graduating from a 7-figure company to an 8-figure company, right? And that really helped me a lot. But boy, if I would have learned the lessons back when I was just a $2 million, I would have achieved the result a lot faster, right?
Sure.
So I think that's important, is finding a good mentor, somebody that you trust, and to really like be grateful for your failures, like, learn from it. Like, I think early on, like when you first start a company, I think one of the reasons why most small businesses fail is because you can only afford to hire the talent that you can afford to hire. Right. And so like, if you think that you're going to basically build the most successful law firm in the country by hiring, an intern that just graduated college, and then just kind of saying, hey, after 3 months, you're my director of marketing, and you're right. Now you're giving out titles where it's not deserved. They don't have the experience, right? I think those are a lot of mistakes, and I've made those mistakes. And then you got to kind of have to work backwards and trying to fix them, So, boy,
having a mentor is actually a huge way to avoid a lot of those mistakes.
It really is.
Absolutely.
And accountability, they hold you accountable. That's key too, right? It's not just about showing you the cliff notes of being successful, but it's about accountability as well,
and making sure that it gets done.
Yeah.
Now you've graduated from you got to 3 million. What is the next thing that they need to know from 3 to 8 million? Like, what needs to happen in that time period?
Well, I think we learned this from our mutual coach, right? Because we had a mutual coach in Cameron Harold. He taught me that, there's the 3 and 10 rule, right? The systems and processes that work or 3 and 1 rather, right? The systems and processes that work for 1 won't work for 3. The systems and processes that work for 3 won't work for 10, right? So you have to kind of like adjust and be agile and make sure that the systems and processes are changing, right? And so that's key. And so I think as you're moving from like 3 million and you're trying to go to 5 or 6 million, now you might need layered management, right? You might not be able to do everything that you used to do when you were a $3 million company, or you might have to like hire somebody and be good at delegation. And now when we're like, a 10 million plus agency, then you're getting into other problems, right? Now you have to hire like somebody that does training and curriculum, right? So that the systems and processes are updated and that people are trained on that, right? Otherwise, it's just, it's just the ship will sink at some point,
I always say that building an 8-figure business is not like building 10 7-figure businesses, right? Because that's what a lot of people think. Well, if I built it to 1, then I can just do 1 twice, and I can do it 3 times, and I can do it 4 times. But that's not how it actually works. You could build to 1 million and never get to 2 million, even trying to replicate what you're doing. So now you're in the 8-figure territory. How does it change at that level? Because now we talked about layered management. So, mentorship, making mistakes. Now you're into layered management and finding people that are specialized and that have the giftedness. What's happening at 8 figures? How are you getting there?
Well, at that point, then it's really trying to find your core values as a company. Like back when I was like a company of 3, you know what I mean? You're like, oh yeah, these are my core values. This is my mission statement, right? This is our culture, right? You didn't really have that, right? Because there wasn't enough people to kind of support that, right? I think, once you start getting past like, we've got 100 plus employees, like you have to really truly have core values as a company, and you have to make sure that like people are living it every day. And you got to make sure that that you're building the right culture. Like you guys like are literally like set the standard for that kind of stuff, at Bader Scott, with the culture. And you don't have to invest in this big office building with all the nice equipment and lunch, providing lunch and doing big party. Like, no, that's why people like working for you, right? Because now you want to kind of create the glue where people enjoy coming to work and they find their passion by working at Bader Scott, right?
Yes.
So that's really what you have to think about as you're trying to go from an 8-figure company to a 9-figure company, is that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I think that you hit something, because one of our company goals this year was to create an environment where people want to come to work. Like that's an important thing. And one of the things that I say is at 8 figures, now you're not just training people, but you're developing leadership. And you have to be constantly in this, development of leaders position, because if you're not, you're going to lose leaders, and that's going to be very problematic for you scaling and growing.
And one of the things too is like when we hired, when the time was right where we needed like an HR person. So we've got a director of people success. When she first came in, like her whole job is to fight for the employees of the company, right? So like she's looking, how do we get better benefits? Like, anybody that, is, on the scale of salary that's lower than it should be, we need to kind of get them up. Anybody that's kind of like a key retain, right? We got to figure out how do we even get them higher on the percentage scale of salary, right? So like all that stuff, like, I love that, while it costs me money to kind of support all of her initiatives, I love that she's in the role that she's in because she's fighting for all of the people and finding opportunities for us to kind of make their lives better, so that's important.
Absolutely. What's the hardest part of building a business?
What's the hard experience, man? Like, I think, as an entrepreneur, we live and die by the one constraint, right? And so, we're always trying to figure out like whether or not we're trying to make our first $1 million. What's the one constraint that I can fix right now? Right. And then you fix it. And then you get to the next constraint. You fix that. Right. Yeah. I think the challenge as an entrepreneur is that, you never stop and celebrate. Like I think, there's always something else to do. Right. And it's like, how do I fix this next constraint? Right. And, I don't think you ever really kind of stop and just kind of look back and take a deep breath and like realize, holy shit, like what did we build? Like, this is pretty cool. Right. And celebrate once in a while.
I do think that is a very big problem with entrepreneurs for sure. Because I meet so many of them and they're not happy about anything. Like they could have this thriving business and they're just like, but we didn't answer the phone correctly or something crazy like
exactly, that. Right. And that's the thing too, is like sometimes when you have that mentality as an entrepreneur, you could seem like you're coming down on the staff. Like they could be doing 99 things right. But you're kind of tuned in on the one thing that we can get better at. Right. And instead of like, thanking them and being so proud, you can kind of come across as like, yes, we got to fix this one thing though. Right. We got to fix this one thing. So there's a balance there for sure.
It creates a high level of intentionality to be more affirming. Because that's like that's something that we have to be better at as leaders, or people will just always assume that we're not happy, and nobody wants to work for somebody who's not happy with the results. So here's a question that I always ask, and I don't want to tell you my answer without hearing yours first. But can anyone be successful? Do you really think that?
Can anyone be successful? Yes. I think just kind of defining success, right? I think not anyone can build an 8-figure company. You know what I mean? But somebody can go out and start a business and make $70,000 a year, and maybe that's success for them, right? Like I think it's sometimes you just kind of have to make the scoreboard winnable, right? And if the scoreboard is winnable, it's like a high school basketball team is never going to beat the Lakers, right? It's not possible, right? So like if they train really hard every day, they're just never going to beat the Lakers, right? So in their mind, they won't be successful, right? But if they play in their league with people that are just, so that's basically, I guess, how I would answer that.
So understanding where you are and what your capability is, and then going back to that word, celebrating your success where you are.
That's right.
It sounds like what it sounds like.
100%. Yep.
What is the most important thing that as you're developing your team and bringing more people on and building this big business, like what is the most important thing that you look for in an employee, and what should people be looking for when they're hiring teams?
So, me personally, like they can send over the greatest resume ever. They can have an Ivy League education, like that's great, right? But I prefer somebody that is that comes that is not it's basically coachable. Somebody that is coachable, that you're not going to bring somebody in and they just kind of do it their way, unless they're hired specifically to kind of do that. And then the other thing I would say is somebody that's kind of creative. Like I always love like when people send me like an email on like a Saturday morning about like, here's 6 things that you might think about doing differently. And it's a video that's customized to me. And, maybe it kind of gets my mind thinking. Like, I love when people kind of take action like that, and it's kind of like out of the box. Right. So for me, that's one of the things that I look for. But, not everybody does that.
Yeah. It's tough. We've had a lot of wins in hiring, and we've had a lot of strikeouts in hiring. And sometimes the strikeouts are really bad. When you strike out with someone, it's really tough to recover from, but fortunately you can recover that. Now, as it relates to being an entrepreneur, what does being an entrepreneur mean? Because, the show's called The Guts and Glory Show, and we like to talk about kind of the guts it takes to be successful.
Yeah.
What does entrepreneurship mean in that context?
So, entrepreneurship, I think one of the biggest things is knowing when to say no to things, right? Because as an entrepreneur, you're usually like a fast starter, right? But your implementation skills aren't really all that great, right? And so for me, I think one of the greatest things when I brought on my COO and he became my no man, right? You're no woman, right? Because like, I can only imagine your balance with Seth, right? It's probably the same thing, right? There's all kinds of ideas. We can do this, we can solve that, right? But sometimes you lose focus, right? And if your attention is on 12 different things instead of one, you're just going to have a bunch of parts in a garage with no car, right?
Right.
So I think it's really important as an entrepreneur is to stay focused, which is really hard because most entrepreneurs have ADHD and all this other stuff, right? So just trying to stay focused, and if you can't, have somebody in place that helps you stay focused.
Yeah, I think broken focus is a real big problem. It's interesting because as I started getting into kind of the entrepreneur space and meeting a lot of founders, people who start businesses, I started realizing like I was not like them. I didn't have that gene. I used to think like I was so entrepreneurial, and I really wasn't. I was just super ambitious.
Yes.
But I don't have that like idea gene. I'm just very good at staying focused. So if you are the idea guy, you need to have someone like me. And if you're me, you need to have somebody like an idea guy.
That's right. That's exactly right. Yeah. In fact, you should, if you're looking for it, you should do like a Colby test, right? Or something like that, and like find out your score and try to find somebody that's a COO that's exactly opposite of you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yang. Like,
and I saw your score. You're really high in quick start, which is very common in entrepreneurs. So like founders, entrepreneurs tend to be really high in quick start. My business partner as well, he's like a 9 or 10 in quick start. And then COOs tend to be really good in fact finding.
Exactly.
And so you want to be like, and so like I'm really high. I'm like a 9 in fact finding. So, finding that balance is really, really important.
And that's one of the core reasons why your firm is growing, right? It's just because little things like that, like matching up with the right people, right? Yeah,
absolutely. And knowing that you need them. Cause like a lot of times we don't even know we need them. And so it's learning and identifying that you need someone and being humble enough to say, I can't do this on my own. And here's a cool part. I don't need to do this on my own.
Yes.
That's the coolest part about all of it.
Yeah.
And so that's what I love. So as we wind up, I want to ask you two more questions, but I want you to plug your newest book, Honest SEO. I think you said it's coming out in August. Yeah. Tell us what we're going to learn in Honest SEO.
Yeah, so Honest SEO is a book that was written to keep people like me honest, right? Mm-hmm. I think that's part of the reason why people don't trust agencies, is because they might have been burned before, right? And they might have made an investment and it didn't pan out. Maybe the expectations weren't really aligned, right? So that, by investing $20-25 into this book, like hopefully you'll be armed with enough insights and knowledge to hold somebody like me accountable and know know what you're paying for, basically.
So if you're out there wondering, does SEO work, and you want to know how you can find out if it works, you get Honest SEO, and you'll at least know the boundaries in which your agency should be working. So at least you have the tools to identify whether you're in the right direction or not.
That's exactly right.
Awesome. Yep. My last question is, what is the one thing that someone told you, the book that you read, something you listened to that really transformed your business and your life? What was that one thing?
So the one thing that always sticks out to me is you have the power to create a future that wasn't going to exist anyway. All you have to do is take action, right? Like literally, like you wake up on a Sunday morning and you send an email to somebody that you aspired to meet, an author that you read their book, right? Maybe if you just emailed them, they might respond, and maybe they're going to be in California next weekend. And, you acted upon that, right? Something came to you to kind of act on something. A lot of times we don't act on things. And it's truly the action that you take that gets the result, and you create a life that wasn't going to exist.
I love that. So if somebody wants to send you an email because they're going to be in California and they want to reach out to the author, what I'm hearing is that they need to send you that email.
Take action. Like seriously,
take action.
That's all, man.
I love it. Jason, man, I appreciate this. It's been awesome. How can someone reach out to you if they want to learn more about SEO? Or if they even have a question about today's episode and how to build their business to 8 figures?
Yeah. So Instagram, Twitter, just at Jason Hennessey, HENNESSEY. And then my email is just jason@hennessey.com, my first name and my last name.
Awesome. So we'll put all that in the show notes. Thank you for being here. We really appreciate this. I learned a lot about the wedding business and the legal business and SEO, and good luck on the book. And we will talk soon. Thank you for joining us on the Guts and Glory Show.
You've been listening to the Guts and Glory Show. For more and to learn more about Luis, hit the website at luisscottjr.com. For consulting opportunities, hit 8figurefirm.com. That's the number 8figurefirm.com. We hope you've enjoyed the show. Make sure to like, rate, and review, and we'll see you next time on the Guts and Glory Show.